So for this little session today, I'm going to show you how I would edit this shot. This shot is of Scarhouse Falls, which is just near the little village of Thwaite in Swaledale in the Yorkshire Dales. Scarhouse Falls is a lovely little waterfall, really easy to access. It's literally at the side of the road in a grass field, and it is part of a public right-of-way, so you've got no problems at all with accessing the falls. It's literally a couple of 100 yards walk across the field and you're right at the side of the falls. The riverbed itself, really slippy. The stones are really slippy, but you don't have to venture onto those to get some lovely shots. I took this shot literally from the grassy bank at the side of the waterfall. So it's a lovely little spot to visit. It's also quite close to quite a few other waterfalls, Wainworth, Kidston Force, Curragh, all within sort of the Keld, Muka, Thwaite area. So you've got a high proportion of waterfalls in the area, so you can make a full day of it, catch quite a few of the waterfalls in the local area. So this, like I say, this shot is Scarhouse Falls, and I'm just going to try and make it look a little bit better than it does already. It's a lovely shot. It's got lovely milky water, nice long exposure time to give the milky effect on the water whilst keeping everything else nice and sharp. However, where the picture is quite dark, so all of this looks fairly dark. All this is quite dark. It's lacking a bit of punch, so I want to just see if I can improve on it a little bit. So probably the first thing I'll do is I'll just check the white balance first to see what, put that in shade and just see what that does. You see that warms it up slightly. Does it warm it up a little bit too much? Go back, let's have a look. Could try and adjust the temperature on the temperature slider instead, so we just don't go too far. That's a little bit better. Just warmed it up a wee bit. Exposure, gonna get the exposure out a little bit, see how it's brought out all these areas, and this area here brought them out a little bit lighter. However, it is made this a little bit pale, so we'll just see what we can do with that. So from there, I'm going to just darken the highlights a little bit, see if we can darken that water, which it has done. Darken these down here as well. Let's have a look at the shadows, see if we can bring out any more of the shadows a little bit. So we'll just lighten those up a little bit. There's not a massive amount to bring out, but it is bringing some of the shadows out in these areas and some of the shadows out from under here, so it's just giving a little bit more detail, which is good. Whites will just darken those a little bit, again just to stop these from blowing out. Next one I will use is the dehaze. I love this little slider, it's brilliant. It just adds depth and richness. You can just see it darkens things, but it doesn't lose the detail. Obviously, if you go too far, you're losing too much detail, but just adds a little bit. I don't want to push it too much, but it just adds a little bit of the depth to it. So I'll leave it there. I'll leave it at plus 21, I think. Just have a little bit of a play with the exposure again. No, I think we were about right where we were. And I will add a little bit of saturation to it as well. That just brings the saturation. So obviously this big rock here, I still think is quite pale. It needs a little bit more depth. It needs a little bit more to it. So what I might do with this one is just pop. Let's see if I pop a linear gradient filter on. It's gonna adjust this part as well, which I don't really want because that looks quite perfect. So what I will do, I think, is just pop on a radial gradient filter. So let's just pop that up, move it along a bit. Don't want to adjust too much more of the other stuff, so we'll just move it out a bit, move it across. Drop it down at the bottom a bit, give it that cover at the bottom. Obviously with the radial filter, you're never going to get it, with it being obviously around the radial, you know, you can't, I mean, I could use maybe the brush tool. Actually, I think I'll try that first. Let's just try that first. So let's delete that one first of all. Let's just see if we can try with brush tool instead. See if we can get a fairly decent sized brush. We can brush it instead, and then we can maybe get a little bit more accuracy rather than the radial filter. Quite a little bit of a tricky job, but obviously we've got a bit of feather on it, so it will allow the feather just to roll over a little bit into the water, but it shouldn't be too visible. Just go around the edges of it all first. On the bottom, the side there, and then just paint in the rest of it, making sure you've got it all. Obviously, as soon as you've painted it over, it turns it red, so you know where you've got and where you haven't. Just be careful not to sweep out too much and pick up any extra little bits that you don't want. Sweeping over, got everything covered there. That's good. Oh, just missed that little tiny bit up in the top there. Let's just run a bit there. There we go, that looks good. So that's obviously now just selected the whole of this rock area so that we can now adjust that without affecting any more of the picture. So I will dehaze that first. See how that just brings, it adds a bit of depth to it. I'm going to add some saturation onto it. But I will maybe just lighten it slightly. There we go. Looks a bit better. Is there anything else we can do with it? I don't think there is. Let's just have a try it, play with the contrast and see how that's just changing the darkness. Maybe a little bit, but not too much, because otherwise it's just going to make it disappear. And I'll tell you what I will do with that as well is just add a bit of sharpening to it. And that's good. Right, so sharpness to that bit there. There, I think that helps just bring that rock out, makes it look a little bit more prominent in the image, and it doesn't look so washed out. So we'll close that filter. So that's closed the filter. So now we're back to working on the full image. So what we'll do there is just increase the saturation on maybe on the yellows, because there's quite a lot of yellows in this picture up at the top here and these leaves on here. I'll also tweak the orange just a little bit, and I will just boost the saturation on the greens as well. Picks up these mossy bits on the stones, which really adds to it. Just pop a little bit of noise reduction on the luminance and on the colour, just to a bit grainy down in these bottom of these stones. So that'll just help to reduce that. And I will pop a little bit of vignetting on it just to darken those edges a little bit, make it pop in the middle. And the other thing I will do is just check for chromatic aberration. I don't think there is any, but I'll just tick it, and that'll just help in case there's any of those there. So I think that is about done. However, I've just noticed this little thing here. What's that? Let's just zoom in. It looks like it's a piece of stick that's stuck out. It's a little bit distracting. So what I might do is see if I can just get rid of that. We'll go for the clone. We'll go for a very big one. Just make that brush a little bit smaller. So the problem I'm going to have is it's into that rock, so I don't want to. See what we can do with that. Just run it down to there. Now it's obviously picked up the top of it, which I don't want it to do, so we'll pick up the bottom. There we go. Now that looks a bit. Let's see what we do with the feather on that. Just see if we can make it a little bit more. What the opacity right back up so it does fully cover it. See if we can move that slightly. Looks a little bit better. Still quite distracting though. Let's just close that. Yes, it's not. I'm going to take that back. Pop it right back to there. Stick back in. Let's try it with. Oh, I've gone for a mask there. I don't need a mask. I need clone brush up. Let's try the brush with more feather and we'll do it a bit bigger. See if we can. Try it like that first. Obviously wants to do it from the upper one, but that brings in the stone then, so I just want it from the water below. I find Lightroom quite slow to react sometimes when you're trying to do cloning, so it's a little bit difficult because you've got to give it its chance to do its magic. There we go. Just increase that feather a little bit, and it has just pulled it out from the edge of that line there. So if we close that and then zoom right back out, no, it's not great, is it? We can still see it in there. Okay. I think a lot to do with it is because it's in this white part here. So let's try to go right back to the beginning again. Let's try it on the healing instead of the cloning option. See if that makes any difference whatsoever. So I'll make it bigger. Let's have a look. Just try it again like that. See what that works out as. Now then, that looks a bit better. See, we've dropped to the bottom now. So let's have a look. I'm just going to close that straight away, and I'm going to zoom straight back out. And now that you see, that looks much better. It's a much more natural clone. And when you zoomed right back out, you can't hardly tell that it was there. Obviously, I know it's been there. You now know it's been there. And yeah, if you look very carefully, you can see a slight outline of it, but it does look massively better than that big stick sticking out. So I think, if I'm honest, that's all I'm going to do with that one. Let's just have a quick before and after check. So you can see now the massive difference between the two. The first image, the original image, is quite dark. There's no detail in these stones particularly that you can see, or in these stones. This stone here looks quite dark, quite flat, and the whole image itself looks dark, it looks flat. So obviously we've worked on it, and this is our outcome. We've got much more detail in this part here. Brings out all the stones. You can see all the sort of individual stones, especially in this part here. You can see detail in these parts of the stone. The water looks a little bit more natural as well. We've reduced the highlights, so the whites aren't quite as bright. We've brought out the detail in this part here, and then we've also put a mask onto this using the brush to just highlight these stones here and really bring out the details and the colours in those. And then we've added sort of a bit of saturation, warmed it up slightly, and I think that looks a lot better than the original. So I'm quite happy with that. So all there is left now to do is to export it back to the main storage system. So we know we're in the same file, we've been working in the same file for a while. So I'm just going to name it Scar House Falls. I'm going to call this close because this is quite a close shot to the actual falls. I've got some other pictures that were taken much further away, so I'll just call this a close one. Double check that the copyright is ticked and export that, and then re-export it again this time without the copyright on. Obviously always do two, always do one with the copyright and one without. Copyright obviously is used for when I'm putting them onto the internet, and then ones without copyrights for myself if I do need to do any prints. So we'll export that one as well. Just up here it'll tell you that it's exporting. As soon as it's finished doing its stuff, there we go, it's all done. So it's exported that. So I can now right click on the image down here, remove the photo from Lightroom, and there we go, that is all done. On to the next one. There we go, all gone. And obviously the next one along will just pop up, which is quite a similar image, which I probably won't use because obviously I don't want too many of the same image. So that's basically how I would work on doing just a simple edit on, but that's without any cropping or anything like that, but just a simple image, simple edit, just to bring out the colours. And that's basically how it's done. So thanks for watching.